I've said it before and I'll say it again. Kids should be in school. Stick around. This is the OutKick Daily Mailbag. Anonymous says, as a high school teacher and basketball coach, I have to say I'm thoroughly embarrassed by not only my own school district's behavior, but many school districts around the country. We've been remote since March, and teachers in our union are fighting going back to school, but continue to lecture everyone about equity. Do you think we will see a huge growth in the enrollment of private schools after the behavior of school boards and unions? I have a feeling many families that can afford private school will go that route. Even as a public school teacher, I'm starting to think that private school is the better option. I had a good conversation with Ovik Roy on the Wins and Losses podcast on Thursday. You should go listen to that. And he made a great point. He said, is it any surprise that private schools, which are market-based, i.e. parents can make the decision about whether or not to pay tuition, most private schools went back to in-person teaching, in-person schooling. The kids are in the school physically. Why is that? Because otherwise, parents would have said, why in the world would I pay for somebody full tuition for remote learning? I'm fortunate to be able to afford private school. One of my kids is in private school in the Nashville area, and he's been in school in person since August. Other kids his age in Metro Nashville public schools are not. Now, I'm using Nashville as an example because I'm a kid that was born and raised in Nashville. I went to public schools K through 12. The failure to return kids to school is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, public policy failure in the United States since the Vietnam War. The data has been clear for months that kids have nothing whatsoever to fear from COVID. It's more likely that young kids die from the flu. Now, I wish no young kids died, but at all, from anything, certainly. I'm a parent. I've got young kids. But the loss in education for nearly a year now that kids have borne the brunt of is a failure of our public policy. It's a failure of our teachers. It's a failure of our school systems. It's a failure of our politicians. There's lots of blame to go around here. But my straightforward point is the data has been clear since April and May that kids belong in schools, that teachers can be there safely, that kids are not the primary vectors of spreading the virus. In fact, all of the data that has happened for the school districts that have opened have continued to reflect that. So to me, I do think private schools will benefit somewhat, but unfortunately the kids that can afford to go to private school are a minority of overall kids in this country. Most parents can't afford to put their kids in school, and unfortunately, if you talk about equity, the kids that are suffering the most are the poorest. They don't have reliable computers or Wi-Fi at home. They may not have parents at home who can make sure that they're actually logging in and learning anything. We are creating a generational divide between the wealthy who can afford to put their kids in private school, who can afford tutors, who live in suburban neighborhoods that have had schools open for their kids, like where I live, and the kids who grow up in big cities that have not been able to go to school. It's a failure of epic proportions. It disgusts me. All kids should be back in school. Let me say this. I appreciate all the teachers that have been working, like where my kids go to school. Their elementary school teachers are phenomenal. There are a lot of teachers out there that have gone to work. There are a lot of teachers like you who wrote in this question that want to be at work and know the significance of kids being in school. Again, the party of science, which is what the Democrats are claiming they are, should be able to stand up to the teachers union and spread the truth, which is schools should be safely open. They should have never closed based on the data. It was a flawed decision that we made to ever shut them down in the first place that was predicated on the 1918 flu example. But the 1918 flu infected people of all different ages equally, as opposed to COVID, which is primarily an issue for the elderly. Use your minds, use your brains, look at actual data, and make intelligent decisions. We failed our kids in this country by not having every school open.